referencing really is like you can have, you know, all the other stuff available to pay, but the academy system eventually has to be free to play if you want to develop and grow, you know, the best possible players. Because the majority of the best players, like if I just used, you know, the place where I grew up, they wouldn't have been able to do it. No chance. Like not even close. So, you know, I definitely think over time that's something that I would like to see.
Yeah, and I mean, shout out to Bridge Barcata. I don't know if you've followed them in their development.
I've seen what they're doing. Yeah,
you need to get out there.
I know. I know. It's funny. Like I don't even own a pair of like cleats anymore. So I need to get back on it.
I mean, and that's part of it too. You got to get in there. You got to jump in on it. But I mean, it's one of those things where it's already built into it. It's already built in the system here, and to a point where I would have some couple of discussions, and you know, why do you feel this way? Why do you feel we're not doing enough? Why do this? It's a matter of like almost the perversion of what's so pure, and we were talking about how simple it is to get out there and just play.
Yeah.
But you obviously the corporations or the branding or this that needs to grow gets its claws on it, and then you know it just becomes something different. So how do we make sure that it stays pure? Like it's almost a Herculean effort. Like it's such a huge question when you say, I want to get started. How? Like what's the first step?
Yeah, no, and that's what we were talking about. Like I think one thing is like obviously, you know, certain clubs or groups have to make certain things first, and I think, like I said, I think Loyal and like Bridgeback Hard and a few other people around, if you make certain facilities free to play, then that's a great first step. And then obviously as you go, academy systems, like, you know, especially at the MLS level, like, you know, those clubs are starting to make real money, you know, with TV revenue, with fan bases and all that type of stuff. Like their academies, like, you know, all that stuff has to be free and stuff. So I think that's a good start. And then over time, I think eventually, you know, I think US soccer and the sport itself it just needs it if it wants to reach the highest level.
Is this just agent Jack Metcalf trying to get himself some future clientele? Like,
always thinking with my business head. Always thinking with my business head. Nah. It's funny when you say that. Like sometimes, like I still think of myself as a player.
Yes.
Like I still view things as a
Me
player.
too, Jack.
Yeah. I still view like I was watching Open Cup games before, and I'm still thinking of like the game as a player. But yeah, I haven't. No, it's fun. The agent side is another one too that I've had, you know, people who I've been friendly with and been around the sport with for, you know, I'm 31 now, 20 years or so that I've been around, and they're like, why would you be an agent?
Yeah.
You know, why would you do that? It's sort of like looked down upon. I feel like in the soccer community from the outside. But if you ask any player, like, you know, if they've had a good agent, you know, agency experience, were they important? Like, there's no question about it. And like, that's kind of why I got into it, because my agent, who I was with for the last 4 years, like the guidance on everything was so important to my career. I mean, I ended up here because of him. And just like so many different things that he was able to help me with along the way. I wanted to give that back. But it is still funny. Like, I feel like, you know, especially in England, there's a negative connotation with the word agent. It's like, oh, you're taking money out the game. Yeah. But it's like, no one looks at like real estate agents like that. It's like, oh, you're taking money out the game. What? It's like no one talks about it like that. But I think because in soccer, it's like, I don't know, just don't get me wrong. There's definitely been some bad ones out there, and there's still 100% ones out there that are, you know, just trying to earn money and, you know, don't really care about their players or clubs or anything like that. So, but no, I know the value, and I think a lot of players who've had good experiences do too. And so I wanted to give that back, and hopefully I can. And I feel like, you know, being in this country for almost 13 years now. Yeah, I feel like I've built up, you know, a good knowledge of both, you know, UK and Europe and the US markets, and I think I can give some good guidance and advice moving forward.
It's always a few bad apples that kind of just give everything a bad rep, right?
I know for
Yeah,
sure.
so- yeah,
And it's like you hear numbers like, oh, Mino Raiola and 30 million from Pogba's transfer, and everyone's like, oh, geez, like, but it honestly, like, you know, most agents obviously don't earn that amount of money. Obviously, some are super successful, and some guys that I've been speaking to are super successful at it too. But the value that they're able to give to their clients, it's, you know, you earn a percentage and you earn a commission, and that's kind of how it works.
So what are some things that you, as a former player yourself, you were part of the classes or the type of system that feeds from the university, which is very unique to America, and that's something that, you know, my parents, when they told me like, oh, like you should pursue this as a for schooling and do the Joe Corona model essentially, right? And so get an education and you get to play soccer in the collegiate level. What does going through that system and being a player, how does that really give you that edge over other agents, or what perspective does it give you that you've never seen or that you wish, and not to say, you know, your former agents weren't capable of this, but they just didn't know how, or personally in there.
Yeah, I think one thing that has helped me now and helped me in multiple things is coming up through sort of two different systems. So I came through the academy system. I played at Liverpool, I played at Wolves, and then, you know, I went to college and I was at Clemson for 4 years. And then, I think being in that system too, where, you know, I went to college for soccer, I didn't go for school. Like, I just wanted to be a pro. And that was sort of presented to me after I left Wolves as probably the best possible route. So, I think seeing both sides of it, seeing guys that, you know, there was a lot of guys I went to Clemson with that didn't want to be pros. And that sort of opened my eyes, like, okay, like there's a group of guys here, like the majority of them want to pursue professional soccer, and some of them are here because they're good at soccer, obviously, but they want to be doctors or they want to do something else, or
free school, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think being in that environment where, honestly, with people who are a lot smarter than me, and like mixing with different types of people, I feel like, you know, growing up in two completely different worlds almost. You know, the English system, the US system, and then being in the university in the South, like I was able to be around so many different people, and communication, and just being able to speak to people from all different backgrounds and or whatever, different ages, and walking into a room and being able to have a conversation. As an agent, honestly, that's part of it is communication.
Yeah.
Like being able to pick up the phone and speak to, you know, parents or, you know, even a young player, and maybe like they're nervous or something like that, and being able to help them through whatever situation they're in. I feel like I was exposed to a lot of different environments. I was around good agents and I was around bad agents, especially Liverpool. I seen the agents pulling in and, you know, flash cars, and it's like this glitz and glamour thing. And then I seen the agents who went about their business and did things the right way. And I think just being around all of that definitely helps me now.
So what would you advise a player that's up and coming, maybe in college, or maybe a pro at the USL level, or anything that's looking for an agent? What would your advice be when it comes to knowing the difference between a good agent and a bad agent?
Yeah. I would say speak to as many as possible first. And that's something any player that I like want to represent, or is coming out of college, or is a young pro, or even a pro that's been around for 10 years and wants to change their agency or their agent, go and speak to as many as you can. And I'll be pretty clear, you know, there's ones that, you know, will be pretty standoffish. There's ones that will be super personal, but you'll be able to get a good gauge of what their intentions are. And I would encourage that. And then, you've got to go with what you feel is right. And the second thing I would say is probably the most important for them is transparency. Like, you've got to have trust and transparency in that relationship, because, you know, obviously we talked about bad agents, and you don't know what their intentions are. Like, they may be pushing something because they know that, they're going to get a little bit more money over here, but the right route for a person's career might be this way. Like the complete opposite way. So you've got to have complete transparency and trust. And look, that takes a little bit of time, but you'll be able to figure that out if you speak to them and have an open conversation with them and ask them questions. Like, the more tough questions that I get asked about it, the easier it is for me, because it's simple. Like, I was a player too, so I know what a player wants. And like some people are different. So like one player might just want to go to a club that's better financially. Some players might be like, actually, you know what? There's a little bit more money over here, but this club is going to be better for my career. I might get better opportunities. And eventually it's up to the player in the end. Like I can only give my advice or my guidance or maybe what I see, but they may want the money, or they may want, you know what? I feel like I can play in this team. It suits me better. I'm going to go here. And that's that. You just have to have those conversations and be completely open and transparent.
I'm a little curious. When Sandy Oloyo became an option for you as a player, how many questions did you ask?
Yeah, I did. I had the conversation with Landon. So I was coming to the last. I probably had like 3 or 4 months on my contract, so I was free to speak to people. And I think Landon had spoken to the club. You have to like get permission and stuff. So yeah, and then I think it was a couple of months before my contract was going to expire. I had several options, and my question with London is obviously like what other players had been signed. Was pretty early on in the process, so that was one of the first questions that I asked, which I think is important to ask. And then like what is the club about? Like what are you guys trying to do? And like everything that he had said on that phone call was aligned with what I wanted to do. And I did have like other options out there, but yeah, once I'd had that conversation, it was clear to me, and I tried to push it as hard as and that's where I probably, understood the value. I told my agent what I wanted, and he ended up getting it done. So,
what you heard as a response in day one, was that the same thing on the last day as far as the club values and what they stood for? Don't you feel?
Yeah, I think, look, every club that starts from the ground up is going to have challenges, and we had challenges too. Every first year team that I've been a part of has had those challenges for sure. But yeah, no, I think everything that was promised to me, what I would receive, I got in a boatload. I couldn't argue with my experience, and honestly, the 3 years I had playing at Torero in front of the fans and stuff were definitely the most enjoyable of my career. I think back to the first part of 2021. I think before I got injured, like there was some of the I just hadn't enjoyed soccer as much as I did. There, and that was probably the most enjoyable period of my career. But if I think back to the 3 years, it was definitely up there for sure.
What was the biggest difference about adjusting to? Because I was there, and it was just surreal during the games that there was nobody in the stands.
That was strange. Yeah,
like, I mean, did it feel like a very important training session at times?
It did. It was bizarre. Torero felt strange. It was empty. And obviously it was like there was a weird atmosphere. You could hear every tackle. You could hear like all the other players, which was different. Going and playing in like the Galaxy Stadium when it was empty. It's just like, I mean, I know like most of the time it was pretty empty for the two, but at least there was
love that.
Yes. But, I mean, it's the truth. Like I played for Atlanta too. There was a couple hundred people there. But yeah, it was strange. Like I think, but I think we did pretty well to adapt to it, especially at home. I remember some games like felt like we were unbeatable at times and unplayable. Like the style of play and everything else, but just like I think we did a pretty good job, and then obviously slowly but surely we got fans back in there. But you can't replicate a full stadium for sure. Like that's everything that a player plays for. So it was strange, and I think everyone around the league just had to deal with it. But no, it was definitely better once the fans got back in there.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know how open you are, but the injury happens, right? How difficult was it to just keep going after and eventually leading to the decision to retire? Right?
Yeah, no, it was tough, to be honest. I think in total I was out like from that Galaxy game away. I think it was like August 1st, maybe 21. And then till playing a preseason game in whatever it ended up being, like March 22. Like I was out for a while. And the first few months was tough. Like first of all, physically, like I was in a lot of pain. Like if you ask my wife, like it was not pretty. Like I was just in bed for a while. So that was like the first part, and then once I was sort of like to a period where I could do things physically after a few months, it was a little bit better. But I'm sure you've heard it before. I think every player who goes through like a long-term injury, you feel completely disconnected from the team. Like I'd walk into breakfast or lunch and it just felt different. Like I felt like I wasn't part of the team. I was just like a spectator. You just feel like you're on the outside. And even though like, you know, the treatment staff, the staff, the players, they'll do the best they can to like, and it's fine, but then they get to go out and train, they get to go out and play, and that bond and connection that you build, like you lose that completely. So it's tough mentally more than anything. And I definitely do think that definitely led me towards retirement. Just, you know, coming back in 22, physically I felt fine. Yeah, and I felt like, you know, some games I felt like my old self, but it's just hard, and especially when you're older. Like I think I turned 30 at the time. Yeah, so I was like, all right, well, I'm a little bit older now. And I think that time out, I just had a long time to think about, okay, like, you know, where do I want to be in 12 months' time? Where do I want to be in 2 years' time? Yeah. And just sitting there and thinking and talking to my family and talking to Katie, my wife, and stuff. Like you process those things, whereas when you're playing week in, week out, it's hard to think about like anything but the next game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you're out, you know what I mean? You definitely do have that time to think about like what the future looks like. So yeah, I do think it all played into it. And then in 22, I kind of just got to a point pretty early on in like February and March, and it was more for me. It was more I could see like I didn't want to get to a point where I was not enjoying it, and I was still enjoying it every single day, but I could see that start to decline a little bit. Like coming in every day and competing and training and stuff. I think, you know, I signed for Liverpool when I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
And I was 30. So I've been doing it pretty intensely for 20 years. Yeah. And I was like, all right, I'm at a point now where if I carry on to like for another year, I may come into training and not enjoy it. And I do not want that. Like I want to leave where I'm still enjoying it every day. Yeah. And look, there's challenges where you're not like happy every day. Obviously, you're normal people.
Comes with it.
Yeah. But I didn't want to get to that point. So I think I made the decision pretty early on, told Landon, told Nate, probably, God, I want to think back now, probably this time last year, April, May time, I want to say.
Yes.
Yeah, it was around that time. And then, yeah, I was just like, well, this is my last 4 or 5 months in the game, so I'm just going to try and enjoy as much as I can. So
did you?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough when you're not playing. I wouldn't say I was happy when I wasn't playing.
True.
And I'm sure the staff will say that I wasn't that happy when I wasn't playing. But I think once I'd made the decision, it was what it was. Like, you know, I don't think I was playing the best football in my career either. So I was like, you know what? Like, whatever happens, however well I'm playing, all I can do is come into training every day, give it what I can. And if I get picked to play, I'll play. If I don't, I don't. Whereas, you know, in years past, that probably wasn't how I was reacting to the situation. Like, if I got benched or wasn't playing, I wasn't too happy.
And you kind of want to touch base on that. You mentioned how tough mentally it is, right, when you're injured.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the team or just teams in general when it comes to soccer provide a good outlet or good help and support for the mental health aspect of it?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And it's tough, right? Because the teams that I've been around, there's always options out there for you. And I know a lot of teams do provide, you know, speaking to people, they provide, like they'll speak, you know, I know Landon had a lot of long conversations with people. But I think it's tough for teams to probably know who's going through what. And I think when you're injured, like, you know, I showed up every day and did my rehab, did my fitness, and like, you know, I don't think they really see it. Whereas like when you go home and like you're on your own and like you're like been doing this for 6 months. What is you know what I mean? It's like So it's a great question, and I think it's one that in soccer and football all over the world, and like in sport in general, I think people slowly and surely will be like, okay, like there's a lot in terms of like being in the spotlight at the highest levels, but even playing, you know, professional sports, there's a lot of pressure on people. And injuries and just like a team dynamic, it's tough to deal with at times. So yeah, I felt like I had everything that I needed, but probably at times, like I'm sure guys who are injured now on the team, or is like knowing like you know professional athletes, it's tough to, I think it's tough to open up and be like, hey, like I've been injured for 3 months, I'm struggling. I never said that vocally, but I knew like mentally, I was like, it was a grind, and I was definitely not where I was mentally when I was playing week in, week out. So it's a great question, and one that I think people need to definitely talk about. And I do feel like a lot of teams are definitely pushing it now and helping players through difficult periods. And even when things are going well, just speaking and being open about things. So no, it's a good question.
Yeah, because that's what we spoke with Elijah about too,
Right.
and then Guido as well has been very open about mental health, especially this off season. And
yeah, like I didn't know Guido was going through all of that last season.
It-
So it's like if he does it so hard, like how will anybody know?
Yeah.
If you don't, you know what I mean? So it's like
And it goes to the point where even in just in general life, like in your life, my life, it takes special people in your life to really have yourself open up to them, and that's
sure.
what helps you out. But
for sure.
there has to be a way, right, where teams can just there can be someone that can just go to. I mean, we've seen it in Ted Lasso, right?
Right.
Have you watched Ted Lasso? Do you watch?
Yeah, I've watched
Without
it.
with a psychologist,
Season
right?
one,
Like
season
she
two,
just
I can't remember.
gets everyone to open up. But it'd be cool if that outlet was available in every team for everyone. But
Yeah.
it does take special people in your life for you to really open
No,
up.
it does, and I think Loyal do a good job of that. And honestly, the team culture that I was a part of, like people speak openly and stuff, but like I feel like when it's like that and it's about you, where like you're struggling mentally, for injured, or it's like a family issue or something like that. Yeah, it's hard. Like it definitely is hard to just be like, hey, like I'm struggling. So
And that has to do with a lot with the network, because some of these players, right, they're roommates with each other, so that has to factor in.
Yeah.
Who decides that? Is that coaches who decide it? Like is this like profiles of people? Because I mean, I think of
it's funny.
Elijah, Camden, and who else? Evan.
Yeah, they live
Yeah.
together.
Yeah,
right?
in the same
Yeah.
room. Like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
must
yeah.
be interesting.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's funny. Like I feel like when you're part of a new team, like roommates on the road, like teams, they'll probably just stick people together.
Yeah.
But then I think over time it develops, and like you build, friendships and stuff like that on the team that you're just comfortable around. But it always changes, because like if you're on the road, like I don't know, I think I was with say 2022. I think I roomed with Jack Blake most of the time.
Okay.
But then like, if I was injured or he was injured, then I wouldn't go on the road, or he wouldn't. Then obviously you go with someone else. And I roomed with a lot of different people last season. So yeah, it's just it's part of it, and I think that helps. But you do see, like, obviously there's people that you're closer with just naturally. Not everyone's gonna be best friends on a team. Just the reality of it, like you're just not. You can be great working with, but it's like if you guys are like, are you guys best friends with everyone you work with? Like, probably not.
I work with him 8 hours every day.
Our regular day job is right next to each other. So
Well, there you go then. But yeah, it's like you're naturally going to be closer with certain people or whatever. But yeah, it is a funny dynamic.
it's funny, right? Because there's got to be that player that just snores really loud
Yeah,
and
yeah,
nobody wants to
exactly.
room with.
Exactly.
And if you don't know
I think
who
that
it
was
is, it's you.
I think that was Vass last year.
Oh,
like, apparently
man,
used to
just an
snore really
animal.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and obviously when Shiva asked you in the last game in press conference, like, hey, like any
coaching,
type of coaching, any type of this,
I
like,
was like, no way.
you were laser focused on your response, on your answer. You knew exactly what it is. Did knowing exactly what the next step for you was make retirement easier, if at all? Because from what I understand, I mean, again, I'm still not retired. In my mind, I'm still a player.
Yeah.
But does that make what I've heard described as the hardest day of your life be?
Yeah, for sure. 100%. I think if I didn't know what I was going to do, I probably would have tried to keep playing. But like, obviously some players, that's just, they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Like retiring sometimes is taken out of their hands, and it's like, hey, you haven't got a contract here next year, and you try and look for other teams, there's no contract there, then it's tough. But for sure, I knew, like, it took me a while to know what I wanted to do. I thought about coaching, working like a front office for a team or something like that. But eventually I found what I was, pretty passionate about. So I knew it wasn't coaching. Like, I just knew it wasn't that. But it helps massively. I think knowing I could like sort of dive head first, like I didn't have like a break. I went straight into doing what I'm doing now. Literally, like the next day, like once I got licensed and stuff, like I was like going at 100%, and I haven't stopped, which I think helps too.
Yeah,
like if I would have had, 3-4 months like a normal off season and then got into something, I probably would have definitely struggled just like mentally with being like almost like the fear of not going into a preseason or like not training and stuff like that. But because I dived, head first into it, I was like, okay, I feel
a lot of American players in general say that once they retire, like the body just feels it when it's training camp, and then your body's just like, what are you doing? Not going, berserk right now.
Yeah.
But that transition immediately. I mean, some of the players that you now represent. I don't know if we can get into that and who. So I don't know if you want to give some examples of who some of your associates, clients are at this point that might be familiar to the audience here in San Diego.
Yeah, well, on San Diego, I have Kyle Adams, Evan Conway.
Okay.
You'll see a guy this weekend for Tulsa, Ruxy. He's a Spanish left back. There's Channing Chaston, who was most recently at Phoenix. I did Thomas Among, who went to Orange County, which I got a little bit of.
So that was you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But one of the fans. It was Nick. Nick
Duffy.
Yeah.
We
He
know.
messaged me. He was
Kiwi.
like, you're taking no, but that was a funny situation. Like, I found out he got released through social media.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, because I mean, I'd heard like obviously when you hear like that he may not be staying here. Like just speaking to players and stuff like Thomas may not be staying. So I'd kind of heard that, but that was about it. And I heard on social media. So and then there like a little bit of like a peek behind the curtain. Like honestly, a lot of clubs like I think a lot of clubs find stuff out on social media too.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, like wait, someone's been released. Like I do too. Like if for example, today, a left back got released from an MLS team, Ben Sweat, and I was like, oh, like I had no idea, but like I played against him before and he got released. So yeah, I heard about it on social media, and I kind of know people that looked after Thomas. He come through Montverde Academy. I don't know if you know like that system, but it's down in Florida, and Clemson has a really close connection to Montverde. So I knew like the people that had helped Thomas and stuff like that. So I received a call from a few teams and just been like, oh, like Thomas is free. Like, what's his situation?
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I can put you in touch with them or whatever, but like, I don't really know. So I text the person who helps Thomas, and he was like, yeah, like I'm not really doing anything officially now. So if you have something, like if you have a contract for him or a team that's interested, like take it to Thomas. And at first, I think he played in Europe, so I think his goal was to go back there, and he talked about going back home and stuff. So I was like, all right, like, you can do what you want to do, but if there's a team out there that's interested, I'll present it to you, and if you want to do it. And yeah, there was a few teams that were interested in him, and then he ended up going with Orange County. So
I can't wait to see that matchup. Like again, like there's a couple matchups
that it's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah,
Blakey coming back or playing. We're Loyal's going over there. Yeah, so that's another one. That Thomas one is a little spicy.
Yeah, no, look, it's one of them. Like I think that was a strange one for me too, because like obviously I just finished playing, and he's a teammate, and it was the first like transaction I'd done with like someone who I'd just finished playing with. But it's kind of one that happened within like 3 days, honestly. Like it happened really quick.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't all finalized within 3 days, but it was like, look, like this is where he's probably gonna go. He was happy with it. He was thinking about going to Europe, but the timing wasn't right.
Yeah.
With the windows being closed. So it's just kind of one of those things where like I had nothing to do with Thomas. Wasn't represent him. Like I still don't have like a rep agreement with Thomas, but there was an opportunity there. He'd been released, and I was like, hey, like, these clubs contacted me, like, asking about you. If they're interested, shall I see what they want? And that's kind of how it happened. So, that's like the business, obviously, of being an agent.
Yeah.
There's going to be situations like that. And then other players, I have, like, Had a couple of guys who got drafted from college this year. San Diego State player who's playing. He was playing at 7 p.m. Kyle Colonna. He's at New Mexico.
Okay.
So he started. He got his pro debut tonight.
Nice. Brilliant.
Yeah. So I have like 22, 23 players. 3 or 4 guys in the CPL.
Just by you started at 0.
Yeah.
And then in this time, knocking on doors.
I have to give props to my agent PJ. He's been fantastic with like the transition, and he basically presented me with a few players. He was in a transition himself, like moving agencies and stuff, and he connected me with a lot of people, a lot of players. So like another one was like Frank Ross, Jeremy. He's playing in Canada. He's from Montreal. Like there was a bunch of players that he was like, hey, like he can't be like, oh, now Jack is your agent, but he was more just like, I represented this player for a while. Like I'm transitioning to something else or like a different agency. I can't necessarily have a lot of players anymore. Yeah. Have a conversation. And that's kind of how it started, which is one of the reasons, like the time was right for me to retire too. Like that definitely helped me in the transition. And that definitely helped me like accumulate a lot of players and kind of how it all works. And then, I've kind of just been building on that and learning. The draft, getting players drafted was like new to me. That was an experience.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that we have here in America.
Yeah, it's strange. Yeah, it's strange, but I feel like for players though, although it may not be perfect, I feel like for college players, it's probably one of the most exciting days. If you get drafted, it's like it's a huge thing. So that was fun to be a part of. But
do you find your colleagues are as well versed? There's a lot of sports agents and just sports in general in America that watch something like Jerry Maguire. I don't know if you're familiar with Jerry Maguire, right?
It's my dad's favorite movie. Yeah.
There you go. So
it's not mine, but it's definitely my dad's favorite movie.
So you've seen it a time or two, but like, are they as knowledgeable of the sport, or is it just because what we've seen going into the sports medium through media, I guess, is that there's a lot of people who know the business of sport, but don't have a knowledge of the game itself. Yeah. Is that what you face, or is there a lot of...
I feel like there's ones out there that are fantastic. They know the sport, the intricacies of it, the intricacies of, playing. You want to get into all the detail of tactics, systems, certain players that have different attributes. Like there's agents out there that have that knowledge for sure, and also know the business side. Like I've come across agents where I'm like almost blown away at like how much they know, both on the field and off the field. So I have seen that, but I've seen the other side too. I've seen the ones that don't know the business, which is interesting to be in that, like, or they kind of don't, or like the way they go about it, they just, it's almost like, they're not asking questions, because like, I think that's the most important thing. Whatever you're doing, if you're new to it, like if you ask questions, you're going to find out. And like the worst thing that can happen is you get no. Yeah. Or like, it's not done this way. It's like, okay, well now I know. Yeah. So I've seen that, and obviously there's agents out there that come from a different background and aren't well versed in football. And it's interesting because it's like what is successful. I think you need to have obviously a good knowledge of both. Yeah. For it to be
optimum.
To be really successful and to help the player and the club too. Because like at the end of the day, I'm working with clubs, and for example, let's take Rooksy at Tulsa. Yes. He's a left back, and I don't know if you've watched much of Tulsa this year, but they're super like possession oriented, and they've moved away to a completely new style. And they were looking for a certain player, and we had this player that was coming from, he's Spanish, and he's super possession oriented, and like certain attributes, like he's not tall, stuff like that. He's not like a typical, because he's played like centre back, left back. He's not like physically huge, but how he is on the ball, it like suited them. Yeah. So like working with the clubs too, like I can help, those on that side too. So I do feel like you have to have knowledge of both, but I think there's been probably successful ones that have knowledge of one more than the other. But there's been ones that I've been like, wow.
Yeah, because you bring you bring that perspective, and you can,
Right.
make your clients a little bit more valuable by
Yeah.
start throwing those qualities in them and saying,
Oh, no,
hey,
for sure.
if you really need to, you know what? In 2 games he played center mid, so sure,
Yeah,
throw
yeah.
him in there and
Yeah.
figure it out. But
Well, no, that's it. But I've the ones I'm around and like speak to a lot, like I've been blown away sometimes by like their knowledge of stuff on and off the field. And
Yeah.
the best ones, they have good relationships with players, with clubs. Like they're always it's been interesting.
What would you say biggest challenge of being an agent? Is it like players' behavior sometimes, or anything
Yeah.
like along those lines?
That's a good question. One I would say is like, probably one that I've ran into pretty early is just like I talked about communication earlier, and like communication with players is pretty easy.
Yeah.
But like sometimes making hard phone calls is hard.
Mm.
And like could be like making a hard phone call to a club, could be making a hard phone call to a player. And I think that's a challenge. And like, you just have to be honest in those situations, and that's the best way forward. But like, yeah, whether it's, club really wanted a player and I have to call them and say, or like, for example, I had one in Canada where the player had an option, but he didn't want to be there. So calling the club and like, being like, hey, like this player just doesn't want to be there anymore. Like he's not happy.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can speak to him, sit down with him. I encourage that, but like, he's telling me he's not happy. So yeah, like stuff like that is challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think like there's going to be a lot of changes in the agency world. Like in October, FIFA are bringing in a lot of different rules.
Oh wow.
So it's going to completely change like how agents operate. But I think in the long term, I think it's good to have a little bit of structure and a little bit of, governance.
Yes.
I'm not sure whether some of the things that they're proposing will stick long term, because I just don't know how they'll govern it. But yeah, I think a little bit of governance, so it's not just the Wild West, is good. But no, it's challenging. Like I've always been a player, obviously, so I'm connected to one team, and now I'm not necessarily. Like
you're a free agent for free agents almost.
And I think that's pretty tough. Like the amount of times I've been speaking to other teams and I say we, and I'm talking about loyal.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
it's hard. It's hard because I'm like, oh yeah, like we always did that, or like, and I'm like, wait, I'm not part of the team anymore.
Yeah.
I still feel like obviously I'm here, I live here.
Yes.
I still feel connected in a way, but like, from like obviously a business standpoint, I'm not. But I think just trying to keep good relationships with everyone, all the clubs, is a challenge, because there's going to be tough situations, right? Like that's definitely one that, I've probably struggled with early. Just like maybe I haven't made the right phone calls, or I've been keeping in touch with people, even like back home in England, have a player over there, and it's like speaking to a club over there, because I'm here, I just feel so far away. But I should have made like, I've been checking in, like what do they want? How's he doing? Like all that type of stuff. So I think keeping up with all that stuff is a challenge too.
Could you release me from loyal? Let's say I'm a player. Like, what would you say? Like, I'm the player on the phone.
I'm Ricardo Campos.
Hey, Jack,
whoever you need to
how's it
call.
going? I'm just here with my family and enjoying the day. Like,
it's tough. Like I've had those conversations where the clubs have called me before they've told the player they're going to get released, and it's like, like I've been a player too, right? So I feel that pit in my stomach too, and I feel responsible, honestly, for a lot of things. Like whether it's a contract, whether it's a new contract, whether it's the next club, whether it's, they want to stay at the club they're at now, whatever it may be, you feel responsible. So when you get a phone call where it's not good news, like that's a challenge. You definitely feel responsible for that, and you feel that pit in your stomach. But it's part of sports, and I've been released over and over and over again through the years. I got released from Liverpool, everywhere I've been released. Wow. So it's like, well, obviously I retired last year, but
you released them.
Yeah.
There's been times where we've seen, particularly with Loyal, where they'll release a player and they do announce it on social media. Like you said, you sometimes see and learn through social. But there's also times where they have players and then we don't ever hear of them again.
Right.
And they don't post about it or anything like that. Do you know maybe why?
Shout out, I'm all night.
Oh yeah.
Nico Boxer was another example. We just kind of stopped hearing about him.
Right. I honestly, the answer to that question is I don't know. I don't know whether it's the communications people, say, like, let's just put it in a statement somewhere, or like, do we do a big post? I honestly don't know. And maybe they speak to the players, like, what do you want this, or
okay.
do you want? Cool. I honestly don't know. I'm sure there's maybe a reason behind some things. But yeah, no, it's a good question. One I'd probably like to know. I probably should know, but I don't. Yeah.
I mean, and you know,
we asked Big Boss, and he couldn't give us an answer either.
That's a good question. Yeah, because I've been on multiple teams where players disappeared, like from the team, and then also like there'll be no. Maybe it's written somewhere at the bottom of a statement, or maybe it's not.
Yeah.
And then I've been part of teams where there's big posts like "Thank you very much," like for your service and all that stuff. So
you were one of those players, like big event for retirement.
That was a little bit too much, but it was funny. It's kind of taken out of my hands a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, at least you didn't get a hurt hog. I mean, knowing both sides, speaking on one, but we'll just leave that one there. But no, I mean, it's really interesting just to have that perspective, not necessarily having you needing to qualify any of your knowledge, especially here in San Diego. But I mean, just turning it back here is what do you see about this place, this San Diego place that at least you see something you want to harvest, that you want to help this movement of soccer in San Diego, however that may be. If that's now representing players, if that's now, like you were saying, going at the pay-to-play system, which is absolutely what needs to be done as well. But what is it about here that you see that's unique from other places in the States?
Well, now, as like we were talking about before, I'm super grateful for my time here. It's been my home here. You know, my baby's due in 8 weeks, and my baby will be born here.
Congratulations!
Yeah, she'll be a San Diegan for life.
There you go.
But no, I'm super grateful, honestly, to everyone from obviously Landon, number one, like Andrew, all the coaching staff, Ricardo, everyone that brought me to the club. I'm super grateful for that because I've found like a home here. But I think one thing that like why I'm so grateful too is because obviously I think the soccer culture here it's been like I feel like it's been starved of it on the outside game because it's always been pushing. And on a sports perspective, I think the first time we sat down with Andrew, he sort of educated people on the sports history of San Diego so that all the players coming here had perspective on why they were called Loyal. And just the battlefield that it's sort of been through on the sports front. So I think that all plays into it. But then on a soccer perspective, just what the community's given to us as a team, and it comes down to us individually, like, all those players here who've been lucky enough to be going into their 4th year, they know better than anyone what they've been given by the community, and as a team, we went through tough times and the community stuck by us, and then vice versa. Like, I feel like the guys have tried to give as much as they can for the community. And, you're seeing it now. Like, there's obviously great attendance for Loyal, but you look at the Wave and what they've been able to do. Like, it's crazy. You look at
friendly with America and Cholos. Exactly.
Right.
Sorry to cut you off.
Right. But I just feel like, obviously you got Cholos down the road, and like that's obviously an amazing team, and obviously very well supported as well. And I think, everything about this community is dying out for like obviously what's here now. And I think it's a special place. Like, you've got all the history about like, I feel like a lot of people probably feel a little bit, mistreated by the sports community here.
Yes.
And
yes.
Now you've got obviously Loyal, you've got Wave, you've got the Soccers, you've obviously got the Padres and stuff, and it's like other sports teams too, right? But now that you have, especially on the Soccers perspective, you have those teams and they're so well supported. It's just about continuing to grow. But I feel like both Loyal and the Wave have done an insane job in number one, embedding it into the community and like making it mean something, because that's so hard to do. It's so hard to do, and they've been able to do that. And I think moving forward now, it's just about continuing to grow, whether that's Loyal going to MLS, whether it's Wave selling out, you know, every single home game or whatever it may be, you know, I think it'll just continue to grow. So, I'm passionate about it. And I feel like it's a special place, and wherever it ends up, whether that's loyal in MLS, whether it's, you know, stays here in the USL or whatever it may be, I feel like on the loyal side and on the Wave side and the soccer side, like the support will be there. And if everyone, you know, you guys do a good job of pushing it out too, it's like you just got to continue to do that.
Yes.
And whatever way anyone can help, then you help, you know. So, it's a special place. I think anyone that comes here, you ask all the players, like, it's a tough place to leave. For sure.
100%. And I mean, you mentioned, you know, loyal moving up or however that may be. I think you're in the hot seat right now, Jack, because last person that was there mentioned MLS.
Yeah.
You know, got a little more popularity than he might have been.
Been one. Yeah.
But let's get into it. You have a unique perspective. You have the perspective of being a player, being somebody who came in once again for a team, but you also have the perspective in a way of being in Charlotte, where they had an MLS team come in and crush that project as well. And, you know, they're still going USL 1. But as far as San Diego, let's just get it out of the way. Would you like Loyal to move up to MLS?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, perfect.
100%. I mean, you just like, it comes down to what a football club's about, and a football club is about the community. I grew up in Liverpool, and, you know, Liverpool Football Club is about that community. Everyone goes, they work hard all week, they spend their hard-earned money to follow the team, and they feel connected to it. And that city, Liverpool's been through hardships too, and you can bond over the football club, whether you travel Europe following the team, or you just go to every home game, or you go and sit in the pub and watch it. However you support, it's all about the community. And growing up in Liverpool, that was clearly, you know, it was very obvious to me. Like, it's Liverpool, obviously now it's like a global team, but, you know, when I was growing up, it was obviously super successful and global, but, you know, it was all about the community, and it still is, like the club's values. And I think that's what Loyal is. And for me, it only makes sense if Loyal goes up. We all know, like, you know, the reality is it's you know, I don't know what it's going to be. It's obviously a tougher question than just being like, oh yeah, Loyal's been here. It's done an amazing job. The community's bought in. The club's in an amazing, you know, situation. It's been successful. Like, okay, like, let's just take them up. Obviously, when you talk about MLS and stuff, I've seen it over and over in Charlotte. St. Louis is another one.
St. Louis.
And it's like, obviously, MLS attracts, obviously, a wider audience. It's more fans and stuff. And I think San Diego deserves an MLS team, for sure. I think it'll happen. But for me, like, yeah, the essence of a football club is the community and, like, the connection and what that brings to people. And I think you only have to look at, you know, all our supporters and the little cliques that they make, you know, the supporters groups, but even, you know, the families that meet another family and then they end up going every week. Like, that's what a football club is about. And San Diego's done it. San Diego Loyal's done it. So for me to see Loyal to go to MLS would be, I mean, it would be insane, because it's almost like, okay, like, you know, I know there's been a push for MLS in the past, but to see Loyal go would be pretty special. I'd love to see that.
I want to put myself in a player's point of view as a player from Loyal. When you hear, we have pets here. And maybe you can speak on that as well as you played in the team. But obviously, there are players that are in the USL that could play in MLS, but there's also players that will probably stay at the USL level. When they hear this, like, oh, Loyal could move up to MLS, I feel like I would think, wow, if my team goes to MLS, where does that leave me if I'm not maybe good enough or they don't want me in the MLS level?
Yeah.
So would that affect some players mentally, or would that affect anything?
No, I think, like, you know, what players can do is by, you know, the best thing a player can do right now is focus on playing. Because that, you know, how well they play on the field is essentially going to help them the most. So, like, you can overthink, oh, like, what's going to happen? Is Loyal going to go MLS or whatever it may be? You know, stuff like that. You can definitely overthink those things. So yeah, but it's a genuine question. Like, I had a bunch of players, you know, Fanuel Cavita, who's the captain at Birmingham Legion now, who I played with in college. Lewis Hilton, who's plays for Tampa, all these players that were at St. Louis, and then, you know, they got pulled into a room like, hey, there's an MLS team coming in a couple of years' time. You know, we can't afford to basically lose money or spend a lot of money for 2 years and then just be no more. Like, they obviously wanted the longevity to be that 100%. Club. So they made the decision, obviously, to fold. And it's tough, right? Like, if you're playing and it's definitely tough. But I think from a players wise, like, it's always gonna be a question. Even if there was no chatter about MLS in San Diego, I think guys are always like, it's gonna be a group of guys like, I think I could be playing in the MLS or whatever it may be. But I think with this situation, the best thing they can do is focus on their performances and focus on the here and now, because that's what will get them. If they want to go to MLS or anything like that, that's what will get them there.
Are the players asking you in that sense?
Well,
like,
I don't know anything.
No, 100%. But like, do they come after? Hey, Jack, you're a little bit more connected here. Know some people. Like, are those conversations already being had, or again, just you respond, hey, play, like just focus on that.
I mean, not like, I wouldn't say like specifically they're like calling me like, hey, what have you heard about MLS? But it comes up in conversation. I'm sure you guys like. Players are just the same as fans. Like, in the locker room, like, we just talk about anything that we see in the media, or, you know, we'll be talking about the same things you guys are talking about. So obviously players talk about it, and, you know, it's obviously a hot topic right now. Every time Don Garber speaks, he seems to mention San Diego and Vegas, and a few others like Phoenix, Sacramento still even. So I'm sure like there's those conversations going on, but luckily for me, I don't know anything. So like, I don't have to like keep secrets or anything like that, or like, so I don't know.
Honest,
I don't know.
Honest,
it's honest.
I
really don't know.
And, like,
wish I could help you.
All I can say is like, you know, I hope for loyal's sake that it's loyal. And you know, I think like I was thinking about this morning actually. You have to think about like Andrew too. Like, Andrew was the one who put his money in put his hand in his pocket, put his money where his mouth was, and took a risk, brought a pro soccer team here, and then COVID hit. He has probably been through it, like, in terms of the challenges to overcome for a pro soccer team. And so I was thinking about that just because, you know, I was reading stuff on MLS and stuff, and obviously always San Diego pops up, and, you know, I hope for him, like, you know, I think he's stuck to his word. You know,
he really did.
You know, he's built a team now that all the players are super well supported, you know, on and off the field. And I think as players, like, you know, that's always amazing to have an owner like that, and not every owner is like that. In any sport, like, you talk about all other sports, there's just different ways to obviously run a sports team. And I think I think it would be an amazing situation if that was to happen, you know, for him too, and everyone that's been a part of the club from day one. Like, you know, if you think about the club eventually going to MLS, it'd be mind blowing. It'd be amazing. And like, obviously there's loads of things that come with that, but no, I'd love to see it.
And I mean, have you been out to a Wave match?
No, I haven't actually. I actually went to the press conference.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how I ended up there, to be honest with you.
Over in La Jolla?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I actually went to that. You know what it was? Who was it? It was either Lizzie or Jesse that messaged me like, hey, like, do you want to come out? Like,
yeah.
And I was like, sure, like, why not? I bumped in, like, Sal was there. So I went to that randomly. Like, I was just sat there on my own with Sal and his family. But it's cool to see, like, to see that announcement. And obviously, they announced, like, Alex Morgan and, you know, Abby, and obviously all, you know, Casey Stoney and all those people were there. But it's something, I live, like, North Park, so
it's right there.
I'm right there. Yeah. And I definitely need to. We've talked about it, actually. Me and my wife talked about going to one of the games. Towards the end of the year, I'd probably like to take my daughter to one of those games. So, yeah.
Right.
Does that change it, man? Like, you know, having a daughter, having top flight soccer,
for
women's soccer here.
For sure. No, for sure. Yeah.
Or are you open to representing female players? Is that something that you're looking into?
Yeah. No, it is. I actually know another agent who is an ex-player too, Cody. Cody Lorendi. He has a bunch of NWSL players and female players playing in Europe, and we've had that conversation. I mean, that sport is growing like crazy.
It is insane.
It's insane.
So much resources.
Yeah,
available.
I mean, like in England, I'm seeing like 60,000 attendance at like some games, and I'm like scratching my head, like,
Camp
wow.
Nou was
I feel
jam-packed.
I feel like 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, it was not like that at all.
It wasn't.
But which is amazing, and I do think, I mean that's just amazing to see, and it's what it should be.
Yeah,
and obviously for a lot of reasons, it wasn't given the opportunity to be like that, but now that it is, it's fantastic to see that, and to have it on my doorstep is just unbelievable.
We'll take you to a game.
So
let's go.
get me the inside scoop. Yeah,
it just shows that having Wave here just shows that San Diego is ready for big teams.
Yeah, that's what we saw. That's what we saw. It's just being in that stadium, the amount of people that are there. I will prepare you. It's like a baseball crowd sometimes where it's very quiet. It's the quietest 30,000 you'll hear. But when it gets rocking, it's absolutely bonkers. So that's the good part of that.
Right.
And it's almost like, how is MLS going to say no to this? Like, there's just it's already here. But in talking about the Wave and Loyal, the two outdoor teams here, do you consider Albion?
Yeah, they're a team, right?
I love that. That's
you're gonna be out there tomorrow?
That's our shirt. Albion.
Yeah,
it's
I should be there. Yeah, I should be.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, I should be there. Yes.
But what are these two teams you mentioned? What they're doing correctly and what they're doing right? What's something that you think either of them independently or just as a movement need to do a little bit more in San Diego?
That's a good question. That's a real good question. I don't know.
Thinking.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. In terms of, I think in terms of like the product both of them are putting on the field, I think it's hard to ask. Like, obviously you want every team to, make playoffs and then make a run in the playoffs, of course. But I think like from a purely like entertainment and like product level and like the level of both the Wave and the Loyal, like the players that they have, staff, all that stuff. Like, you've got super well-known players and staff on both sides. I don't think you can ask for much more than that. I'm sure, like, if I thought about it, there would be things like, maybe they could do this and stuff like that. But from like, from both of them, from starting from scratch, and you think like before 2020, there was none of this.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about where they are and like how far it's come. So I'm sure I'd probably have a few like little things, but
next time we have you in the garage,
I'll make some notes. Yeah, I'll make some notes. And look, like as a player, like I'm sure, like, thinking back to it, like I'm probably one of the biggest internal moaners of all time. Like I would always be like, why aren't we doing this? Or like, why aren't we doing that? Like, geez, like even like little things like food, like, this food is, or whatever it is, like I would moan.
Breaking, like Olympic
inside.
Training Center food.
No. That is actually really good. Like, I mean,
it's the Olympic Training Center, man.
Yeah, like,
better be.
To have that service, but like on the road, you would like moan and stuff. But like, I think that's just players in general. We like to moan about a lot. So.
You have to be a little posh about something, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's always something to moan about.
No, and it's in progress, and that's the thing here in San Diego is we want to get to the nitty gritty and what really makes it unique. Because
how about you guys? Like, what about you guys as fans? Like from both teams, like Loyal, Wave. Like, have you guys had things that you think could be done way better? That's just like.
I mean, in terms of no,
we flipped the page.
Yeah, we've had conversations with them as well, and there's a lot of.
If he speaks, he gets in trouble.
I'll get a phone call from Ricky.
Yeah.
but it's reaching out to the community. They've done a really good job at that. But at sometimes there's communities that aren't necessarily being
right.
harnessed the way that they necessarily should. Where, you know, just speaking about the South Bay, it seems like more attention has been being placed on the South Bay recently. And my hope with this project is that, and not that to say that it's happened or hasn't happened, but I don't want my community to be taken advantage of and propped up and used, where instead of being used, no, like, let us help you. Like, we're here, we're willing to help. Like, let's showcase who we really are instead of just, you know, being another selling point, another, you know, check mark for culture.
Right.
And again, we've you know, we've been wrong too. Like with the Siempre Leal jersey, you know, we were like, well, another Chicano Park video, and turns out, well, they went actually down the street here,
right.
as close as you can to TJ, as close as you can to the naval base with the helicopters going over.
Yeah.
But like, no, that was a community. Perfect.
Yeah.
Great job.
Right. Yeah. No, it's
No,
tough, right?
naval base
Like
is
you
right
have,
there.
like, I feel like they probably have a pretty tough job in making sure like they try and cover everything. And I'm sure like when you try and cover everything, there's always going to be ones that you miss.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But no, like I feel like, you know, whenever there is someone like that, like I think back to, you know, I reference Liverpool a lot, but
Yeah.
Liverpool, like they are connected to the community, but they have issues all the time.
Oh, 100%.
Like
yeah.
ticket pricing,
Yeah.
you know, whether they're
Gerrard slipping.
yeah. Well, that was a low blow, but
From a Chelsea fan, so I mean,
yeah. You know, or like, you know, whatever it may be. You know, I think like Everton do way more in the community than Liverpool do. And that's been an issue for Liverpool fans.
Okay.
So it's like you can have a super connection to a club and be well connected to it, and it's like amazing for the community, but there's always going to be things they can do better. And I think that's on the community and the fans and all that to be like, hey, and have a real conversation.
Yeah.
And be like, hey, like, are you guys thinking about this? Like, and bring it up. And I think, you know, one thing with Liverpool is like, I know so many of my friends that go to all the games and do all the different things. Like, they always bring up like, you Everton Football Club, they do so much for the community. Why isn't our club doing stuff for like, you know, communities that are struggling right now? Like, so it's it's one of them things.
Another thing we talk about is like that communication, that transparency that, you know, you were talking about being as an agent, right? Like communication of, you know, even just being transparent about injuries and not just thinking about, you know, is this going to give the other team an edge, where there's I guess structure in places where no, you have to disclose this. You can't keep it to yourself. And so, you know, sometimes we hear, and a good example is Ebby, right? So technically, we know it's an ACL injury, not a tear.
Right.
So that can be a bruise, that can be this. It's giving hope, but again, you have the whole squad utilizing the supporting Ebby shirts, and that's always just almost a tell. That's it for the season. So. And other times as well where there's kind of mystery, you know, what's going on. So I think that's something that can be just worked on as far as that transparency, because even in preseason, like there's so many fans that were waiting and wanting information. Kind of why we got in trouble with the Ronaldo Damu situation, where like there was no soccer news happening. So what's going on? Oh, there's this Google thing that the league messed up with. So boom, here you go. I'm sorry, there's nothing else to talk about. But
it was the USL page confirming it, right? So
rumors.
we just took the screenshot and posted and said, hey, this rumor, this could happen. And
I think
got upset.
Yeah, there's always going to be. I think there's, you know, even if Loyal goes and wins the league and everything's perfect, like, you know, throughout the year there'll be issues, right? Like, and I think it's important to have those conversations and hear each other out. And I think, you know, growing up with a club like that was, you know, so community based and connected. I think when you get to a level where, you know, you care about each other so much and you're all invested in it and you're all pulling in the same direction, then you can have those open conversations. Be like, hey, like, why do you guys do that? Yeah. And it's like, hey, we don't really agree with this. Like, I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times where the fans have almost not showed up to games at Liverpool because of the ticket prices, but it's not like they'll ever stop loving the club.
No, 100%.
They just have an issue. Yeah. And it's like, it needs to be resolved, and you can have a conversation and they can give their reason. Like, hey, like, the club's in debt or whatever. It's like, all right, well, I don't mind spending the extra $10, $15 to come to a game.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be. But no, those conversations are important.
So, I mean, it's actually a good transition there because you talk about some of the challenges that community and team face. Right. And, you were part of a team that had a little bit of that challenge with a former teammate of yours, actually the last annual Loyal player to sit across here
was he really?
Andrew Carlton. Yeah. So, that's something that the community didn't necessarily feel listened to. And that, I think, kind of festered throughout that season in the stands. And that was a lot of areas of chit chatter and focus.
Yeah.
You even got some of that communication towards the end and you spoke back. And so we'll kind of get into that. But what about when something like that happens? Like, is that something that goes into the training ground, or was that something that was just, it's auxiliary, it's the fans? Yes, we wish everybody would be happy, but this is our job, and that's our teammate. Or how was that dynamic there?
Yeah, no, I think it was a tough situation, honestly, for players, because I think, just on a basic level, if you're a player and you have fans, like I remember being in New Mexico, I remember being at away games, maybe Phoenix. Trying to think off the top of my head, but at home too.
Yeah,
at home, like when you have one of your teammates like getting like basically abused by your own fans, like I couldn't accept that. Okay. It was tough for me. Like I was like, obviously away and home. Like obviously at home, it's obviously almost 100% your own fans. You may have a few fans there, and then on away games you have 90 to 95% away fans screaming at you, and then you also have your own fans screaming and shouting. It was something that I didn't understand, honestly.
Yeah,
like I didn't understand it, and I just felt like at that point, I think the one issue that I had is like after a game, the guys who didn't play, we would run fitness and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. And we'd be running back and forth. And like when the fans were like screaming, like, obscene things to one of your teammates, it's like, wow. Like it like made me angry, if I was going to be honest. It like it really hurt me because I was like, we're playing week in, week out, for you guys. And we receive so much in return. But this just felt like, that one was just like, well, okay, obviously I understand people are not going to agree with, that situation. And that was always going to be the case.
Yes.
But it was to the point where I was like, all right, well, that people can have that opinion. But when it comes like, 3 guys running on the field and one guy's getting abused, like, it's in my nature to say something and just be like, hey, like, why are you guys doing that? If you have that opinion, it's one of our teammates, like you don't have to scream, obscene things to him. And it's just something that I felt, wasn't necessarily personal. Like I'm friendly with Andrew. I played him in Atlanta. I played with him here.
Yes.
All our teammates were cool with him. Like, Andrew's actually a great kid. And like, it just felt like it was too much. To be honest, that was my perspective on it. And like, look, like, I'm sure there's a lot of things that I don't agree with, like politically or like talk about anything, like not even politics, that I don't agree with. Yeah. Him and my other teammates on. And I'm sure there's things that I do agree with him and my other teammates. And like, I know people talk about like, obviously his situation and like, with like the January 6th thing and all that stuff. But for me, like he was a kid and he was super young and he had a lot of challenges in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And then when COVID hit, I seen so many people back home and here struggle mentally and like try and find like an outlet to do something.
Yeah.
And like so many people went through that, and he was a young, person. And yeah, I just felt like whatever he did, like I just don't think, like he spoke to the team about like what happened, and you ask all the guys that were in the locker room last year what they think of Andrew Collin, and there'll be one answer. Like guys who probably are on the exact opposite political spectrum of Andrew.
Interesting.
For he was amazing. Like super, super nice person.
Yeah.
Friendly, good to talk to, good fun. And that's my perspective. I only know the person.
Yeah.
So like if I know you and like, I don't know, 2 years ago you did something, or like 2 years ago someone else did something.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, you know, I only know you now, and I know like what you're about, and I know like who you are, and like, you know, what your morals are and stuff like that. So that's where I took it. Obviously you have to take it at that value. So
yeah. And, you know, and that's kind of the same thing I saw. I saw a kid just here, like, I'm like, oh, this is some more in Spanish. It's just a kid.
It's a
And
kid,
chamaco is
A lad. Young lad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's an interesting perspective that I haven't heard. It's just that, you know, you go in this long season, you go away, and you get abused from the opposing fans, and that's part of it. And you almost gave them a reason by having this person there as well with Andrew, but then going back home and then just also feeling that negative energy where it's your safe space. I can imagine that just being
it was strange, like being on the road and like some of your own fans like shouting stuff, and then like being at home and shouting stuff, and like it got to a point where it happened all year.
Yeah.
And I was just like, hey, like why is this happening? Like what is going on? Like, you know. And look, I don't expect everyone to agree with my opinion. But that's what my opinion was. Yeah. And, you know, I'm still friendly with Andrew, and I probably will be. And yeah, I just think it's one of those things where like I had this perspective too, like before he signed. And like I don't know what you guys think about this, but like, you know, everything that we stood for as a club and we did as a club, on like social issues. You know, we had the thing with Elijah first, and then we had the thing with Colin. Like both of those things, I feel like, you know, we stood for what we felt was right in the moment, and we made a stand and like, hey, this is not acceptable. And then, you know, when it comes to Andrew, where the conversation went, like, you know, I felt like, hey, like no other club will probably give this kid a chance. And it's like, whatever you think about him politically, whatever you think about him as a person, like, do you think someone deserves a second chance in his situation? And maybe me knowing him for 2 years before gave me a bit of a different perspective. But I was like, well, why aren't we the club that gives someone a second chance? Yeah. That was my perspective on it. And I was like, I feel like that sends an even more powerful message to be like, you know what? If you think he really messed up, or if you think, oh no, he was doing something that was politically, just he went to someone who's like political, whatever. Yeah. Whatever your perspective on it. In the end, he paid, like, he wasn't in football for a long time. And I just felt like, as a club, it was, you know, an opportunity to give someone a second chance. And now he's found another club, and probably doesn't happen if Loyal don't sign him.
No, 100%.
And like,
it's a very good.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, like you can always disagree with someone, and if you disagree, like
I think just when it comes to at least the Mexican culture,
right?
And because I can speak on that culture, I'm Mexican as well, but I think a lot of people just felt betrayed by the club when they signed Andrew, just because of who he supported as a political figure, right? Just of what that man has said, with the amount of power that he has,
right?
And a lot of people that are from this culture just maybe felt a little betrayed by the club, saying, why are we signing someone that supports someone that said those things, right? But I can also see your point of view where it's, you know what, like, I've never thought of that, where Loyal is this accepting club, we need to accept everyone.
Yeah, and you know, it was one of those things where those conversations, you know, and I think, honestly, I don't know whether all the players knew, like, about the stuff that happened with Andrew. Yeah, I don't know, but then obviously he spoke to everyone before he signed and stuff, and you know, and like, yeah, I think, you know, all I can say is like me knowing Andrew and knowing him for 2 years and then playing with him, like I'm not his best friend, like you know, but like I wasn't best friends with everyone. Like I was, you know, close with probably a few guys on the team, but like I have good relationships with all of them, and yeah, like when Andrew was coming here, like obviously I shoot him a message like, hey, like, you know, obviously good to see you back, like in football and all that stuff. But I think the one thing that I would say to that point is, which that is a fair point. Like, and I understand that perspective, 100%. My thing is like, knowing him as a person, like he doesn't discriminate against anyone, or like that wasn't even like a question about him. Like, and I think him having like, a political opinion, I understand like the person that, maybe that he went to that day to like maybe see him talk or whatever it was, has like political opinions which are super like divisive, and like obviously a lot of people don't agree with what he says. But I think when you look at the person, I think that it's nuanced, right? Like what I think maybe maybe the reasons why like weren't anything connected to anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, because I think if you support someone politically, like I don't think you agree 100% with every single thing that they do.
Exactly.
And it's like, even like if you take the president now, like, you may support him politically, but you may not agree with every single thing that he does. And I think that's what it comes down to. And so like, if you take that out of it and you look at Andrew, like there was never a question, like there was any issues of like discrimination or not, or like being like, I don't think he represented like what that president stood for. Like it wasn't like that at all. And so my perspective, like I said, when you know someone and then you see that and you like add in like, everything that was going on. I feel like, obviously a lot of fans probably felt differently. Yeah. Which is fair too. Yeah. Like I have no problem with that.
And it's easy to get labeled as something, right? Based on
100%
on your beliefs. But unfortunately, it's just the reality of the world that we live in, right? Where you're not always going to make everyone happy.
No, never.
My thing too is like, it wasn't even with him. Having actually met the individual, met the person, is I wish the club would have leaned a little bit more, and I think a lot of the fan base would have wanted to know that side of Andrew a little more, instead of, hey, let's throw him over on 2 balls in a mic. Let's have a conversation with him. Let's not be happy with how long the length of the conversation was, but we hashed it out. That's it.
Right.
Instead of showcasing exactly the individual. Like Landon had a point where he was like, you wouldn't ask like Stoneman or Guido, hey, why aren't they in the community more? Why aren't they doing this individually? Like that okay, is valid, but showcase that person that is growing. Like if you really want to be the club that gives that second opportunity, show us you giving him that second opportunity.
Yeah, and I think it's tough, right? Because like, I agree. Like there's, everyone's going to have an opinion on something like that, and something that obviously was pretty public. Yeah. Like especially if you went on social media and stuff. But yeah, like, what it comes down to is like, I believe deep down that he's a good person, and I believe that all our teammates saw that, and the club, they obviously made the decision not to keep him around, which is fair too. That's part of football. But I think knowing him, and it was a challenge for him coming here too, right? Like, I think as a club, he knows like the club has a voice, and people in the community aren't scared to voice that. He obviously heard that, but I think for him too, like he had to take that on the chin and sort of put up with that for a year. And I think in every situation that he was put in, like, because I don't think he had the opportunity probably to sit down with every single person and be like, and I think it is tough because like if you're asking someone like, oh, like, do you discriminate? It's like, well, you wouldn't ask.
Yeah,
someone,
no, exactly.
But I understand it. Like, given like all that stuff it's super, complicated. But I think what it came down to for me, and like, the interaction I had with a couple of the fans was just like, I knew deep down, or I believed deep down that he was a solid person, and he would stick up for his teammates no matter what, on and off the field. And, he was a good person to be around. He was fun. And like that's all I knew. So then like, that's it. And like, I understand like the political side of it, but I think deep down when you get to know him, there's,
my
and I just wish everyone had the opportunity, honestly. Like, I think if everyone had the opportunity to do that, like, I think haven't had super in-depth conversations with everyone on the team, but I know probably guys who were probably maybe literally 180 on a political spectrum.
Yes.
To him, you know, in the end, once they had those conversations and got to know the person, like your perspective changes.
No, and that's at this point. I think Vegas is doing a little bit more with him, just personality wise, just having him on socials a little more. But I mean, that's.
I mean, he seems like he fits the Vegas picture, right?
And you know what? And this is chaos. I can't wait for him to score.
It'll be interesting to see if that happens.
I've been
Tony likes to root for chaos sometimes.
I want chaos. It's going to be a 5-1 San Diego Loyal victory, but it'll be Andrew Carlson.
Scoring the penalty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but something he's good at.
Everyone's entitled. And everyone, you know, I think one thing as well is like everyone's entitled to their opinion. If you feel strongly about it, you're entitled to voice it. You know, so yeah, I think, you know, I would honestly love to probably sit down with people and talk about things and probably hear their perspective. And then maybe they can hear, you know, us as a teammate as well. So
we'll give you the contact info of Craig Elston, who was very outspoken about it. Right?
Oh, really?
He stopped showing up to games because he stood his ground based on his beliefs. So I feel like if you're really about like maybe having a conversation with Craig would be interesting.
No, honestly, because like it's not like, you know, honestly, like politically, like I don't really like, you know, I've never really been. I read and try and educate myself on stuff for sure. Like I try and do all that stuff, but like I'm not really like on you know either end of the spectrum. Like I probably have like things that probably go both ways. But yeah, I feel like, you know, with the Andrew situation, all I could do was take him like who he was as a person, who I knew, and yeah, you know, I think having those conversations and like hearing your perspective now, I like honestly like of course like I'd heard those things before, but it helps me understand like why maybe you have an opinion on certain situations. So
I think honestly
it's good to talk about it.
That's going to be your strength, especially in this new venture that you have, is just being able to listen and being able to understand and use that new input into you know becoming the Jerry Maguire of soccer in San Diego. But no, I mean it's really awesome having somebody like you here and actively being a part of the movement in San Diego, because that keeps everything grounded in a sense, and you have a good eye of what maybe something should be, just like maybe like Ricardo has and his knowledge of Brazilian soccer and all that. But I mean, is there something that, you know, just kind of wrapping it up here, like something that you have a magic wand at this point and just say this for soccer in San Diego? Like what is it?
What a question.
You know what? I would love, and this goes for both Loyal and Wave, but obviously I'm connected to Loyal. So I would love them to see them win this year. I think they've got the team to do it. I think they've got every chance of doing it. You know, you only have to look at the squad they've put together. So yeah, I'd love to see them be successful. You know, it's funny, like, thinking back to other teams that I've been on, all that stuff, like you always like root for them, and like you obviously always want to see them, like, you know, as long as you leave on good terms. I'm sure if it was like but all the teams that I left, I was fine with. You always want to see them do well, but no, I think it would be really good to see them be successful, whether that means winning the regular season or, you know, winning it all. That would be, you know, just a running. I think, look, like as a team, we've been right there, right? Like, you know, last year, I mean, we finished second, and it's like, you know, we're right there, and I think, that would be pretty. And honestly, same goes for the Wave. I know they were disappointed with how it all finished last year, but they could probably be right there too.
Oh yeah,
so there's two soccer teams there that can try and catch up to the Soccers.
I'll invite you to we do Spanish commentary for the soccer, I got you for 16-time champions trying to go three-peat.
That is insane.
Isn't that wild?
That's crazy.
Like
that is insane.
And it's right here in the backyard. Like it's
crazy to think about, because like I know like soccer at any level, indoor, outdoor, whatever you want to play, like being successful every year is almost impossible.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy how they've managed it.
Powerhouse, man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, fair
It's,
play
the,
to
it's
them.
the TJ talent.
Yeah, are they getting
exactly.
so? What are they getting a stadium in? Are they
Oceanside,
Okay.
but rain delayed it. They were going to move in next year,
really?
but now it's construction. Yeah, it's going to
Here for another season.
Yeah,
Woo!
right.
But no,
great for
Jack.
us, it's
I mean,
closer.
it's been an absolute pleasure.
No,
Thank you
thank
for
guys
your
having me on.
time.
I appreciate it.
it.
I would love for you to come back and just
Oh
just kind of
I'm
check
around.
in, like
I'm
yeah,
around.
and then
Yeah,
I mean
15 minutes, 20 minutes away. So
get some of your clients
I'm
in,
here.
in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
garage.
It'll
You'll
have to be-
Kyle.
It'll have to,
Yeah.
It'll have to be before you're a father because you're gonna be
Oh,
a
I
full-time
know.
dad.
Yeah,
It's gonna be
no,
hard.
that's
I know.
it. Are you
Nah.
ready for that? Just like real quick.
I don't think you can ever be ready, but it's funny. Like I was panicking the other day, and I think one thing that put in at my age now, my brother had 3 kids.
Oh, wow.
So I was
Oh,
like, wait,
shit.
like, if he can manage that, I can manage one.
Yeah, of
surely.
course. Yeah, you got
But,
this.
I might not be saying the same thing, come June and July when I haven't slept. So we'll see. But no, thank you guys.
I
No,
appreciate
thank you,
it.
man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.